morning, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the last of our video conferences for this academic year. It is a pleasure to have all of you with us. My name is Dr. Joanne Murphy. I'm the Director of Programs with Non-Governmental and Intergovernmental Organizations. I'd like to welcome Ambassador Vijay, Nambiar, and Ambassador Kamal, and thank Ambassador Kamal for organizing this video conference for us this morning. I would also like to welcome our friends at Lehigh University, Bronx Community College, Montclair High School, FDU Vancouver, which is up very early in the morning to join us, and our partner in the Metro campus at TNAC. Ambassador Kamal, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back with you and with all your participating universities on what you have rightly described as the last session for this semester and this academic year, but perhaps the most important video session that we are having with all of you, because it is a distinct privilege and a pleasure to have as our panelist Ambassador Nambiar, the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, the Chef de Cabinet of the Secretary General. In other words, the real brains behind the Secretary General. The Secretary General is the mouthpiece for the work that is done by Ambassador Nambiar, the former distinguished permanent representative of India and now the Under-Secretary General in charge of the Secretary General's office. He also happens, entirely by chance, to be the husband of a very prominent classical singer from All India Radio, a person whose voice has brought happiness and pleasure to vast millions both in India and in Pakistan. And so it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
With his permission and with yours, I'd like to lead into the subject myself. We're trying to find out what is the future of the United Nations. And in order to establish the future of the United Nations, we first have to establish the present in all its successes and its shortcomings. Now, we all know that the United Nations is the sole universal multilateral organization. The initials add up to SUMO or sumo, which means that it's like a sumo wrestler, a giant of an organization, and obviously one which cannot be ignored by anybody, including the sole surviving superpower of the world. Now, that being said, the fact of the matter is that it's not really an organization. It is more of an idea, a concept. The United Nations is the concept that it is better to sit around a table and discuss and debate and try to arrive at consensus than to just go into the jungle and fight it out. And so the United Nations is best seen not as an organization, but as a table with chairs around it. And all the successes and all the failures of the United Nations are therefore not the successes and failures of the table, but of the people sitting around that table. And that is important to know, that the United Nations is a collection of participants called member states, and you have to analyze their motivations in arriving at a judgment about the successes and failures of the United Nations. Now, in actual fact, it's not one table. There's one large table with 192 chairs, and that is called the General Assembly. Then you have a second table with 15 chairs, which is called the Security Council. And in actual fact, that second table of 15 chairs is two tables, one with just 10 chairs and one with 5 chairs. The 5 chairs are the permanent members, the 10 chairs are the elected members, the 192 chairs are the General Assembly. So there are 3 tables in the United Nations. Now, setup gives rise to many problems, and I can think of 4, and we are going to shoot them as 4 arrows at Ambassador Nambiar in the hope that he can then walk us through the complexities of these 4 problems that the UN has to resolve. The first is the confrontation between the concept of democracy and the concept of aristocracy. Democracy means one man, one vote. Aristocracy means that some are more powerful than others. And basically this is the problem of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council who have extraordinary privileges. They are not just aristocrats, they are monarchs. They are hereditary monarchs because they are permanent. And they have the veto and they have permanence. And we ask ourselves, how in an age of democracy, with 1,000 years of democracy behind us, how can we accept an institution which gives such powers to just 5 members? Now the 5 of them, of course, reply that we are the ones who established the UN. You are all being allowed to sit in, but this is our organization. We established it in 1944 in Dumbarton Oaks, and these are the ground rules that we established, and we allowed you to come in, so you can take it or lump it. And now, but this does create a problem of democracy versus aristocracy. The second problem that we have in the UN is the mushrooming of wars. Wars are just blossoming around the world. More wars have occurred since 1945. More people have died since 1945 than in World War I and World War II combined. More than 350 wars have taken place since 1945. Some of them are major zones of tension. The Middle East, which is Israel, Palestine; South Asia, which is India, Pakistan; Far East, which is North Korea, South Korea. These are the old wars. Then you have new wars all over Africa. You see wars mushrooming, particularly after the end of the Cold War. And so we come to the conclusion that the Cold War, which most people think was bad, was actually good. It kept the world in focus. There was a pressure cooker in the world called the Cold War, of pressure cooker of friends and enemies. But once the lid of that pressure cooker was removed, the bubbling became boiling, and you have these ethnic, cultural, local, racial strifes all over the world, in which people continue to be butchered by each other. And I don't know, and I wish Ambassador Nambiar will tell us, how are we going to be dealing with this mushrooming of wars? The third problem is poverty. Poverty is not just shortage of money. Poverty means poverty of opportunity. And without opportunity, you are condemned to early death. So poverty means early death. And it is by far the greatest violation of human rights in the world. And let nobody tell you the contrary. Poverty is increasing around the world. If you take China and to some extent India out of the equation, poverty is increasing in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in Eastern Europe, and even in the United States. And so here we have an organization which was supposed to deal not just with wars, but also with the economic causes of wars, which is poverty. How is it that we have not managed in 60 years to resolve this problem? And what are we going to do? Because we have the Millennium Development Goals, but they are not on target. We are not succeeding. And so you have these 3 very, very important problems which the UN is facing, and all of them then lead to the 4th problem, which is the problem of